Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Munch and Learn. I'm Elizabeth, the Public Programs Coordinator here at the Dixon. I want to thank you all for coming out, especially this close to the holidays. So just a couple of pieces of housekeeping. We are recording these sessions via Zoom so that you could still see them on our YouTube channel if you missed one or want to see one again. Next week's Munch and Learn with Dr. Amy Torbert of the St. Louis Art Museum will be virtual. So please go on to the Dixon website to register for that and to get your Zoom link. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Julie Pierotti, our very own curator.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. Okay. All right, all of my stuff here. Okay, so thanks so much for coming. Like Elizabeth said, thank you for coming during this busy week. I have really enjoyed putting this Munch and Learn together. It's been really fun for me to learn about a really special work of art that's in the Black Artists in America exhibition. And here we are toward the end of the run of the show. I think we have like a week and a half left. So, you know, the exhibition is kind of winding down, and it's been nice for me to spend this time with one of the works in the show and have, you know, another reason to go down into the galleries and stand in front of it, getting ready for this Munch and Learn. Okay, Elizabeth, did that work? Okay, good. Okay, got it. So thank you, Art Bridges. Before I get going, I wanted to thank Art Bridges. I wanted to acknowledge the support that they've given us for the programs, the educational programs that are accompanying this exhibition. They not only have provided financial support for the exhibition, but they really have provided moral support too. And Margarita and I have had several Zoom calls with the big team at Art Bridges, and they've been really supportive of the project and really generous in lending 4 works of art to the exhibition as well. So we couldn't be more grateful to everyone at Art Bridges. So why Horace Pippin and why this week? Why Peace on Earth? Well, Noah, the intern this past summer, assigned me the topic and the date. So I decided to kind of roll with the holiday theme and think about, you know, part of this Holy Mountain series by Pippin is about a peaceable kingdom, and just got to thinking about the idea of peace on earth. And since my favorite Christmas songs all have to do with peace on earth and mercy mild, or peace on earth, goodwill to men, or Stevie Wonder, there'll be peace on earth, I decided to go with the peace on earth theme. So it gave me a chance, this Munch and Learn has given me a chance to get to know Horace Pippin and his work better. And that's been so great. I've been really grateful for that. Unlike many of the artists that are featured in the Black Artists in America exhibition, there is a good bit of museum and academic scholarship out there on Horace Pippin. He was, you know, kind of a star in his own time. So there was commentary on his work in press during his lifetime, in the, you know, national press during his lifetime. Interviews were done by, you know, major publications during his lifetime. So there's a good deal of information out there on him, and that's been really great. So a little bit about Horace Pippin. He was born in Westchester, Pennsylvania, near Philadelphia. He quit school at the age of 15 after his mother died, I think, and began working, but he had always had this interest in art. I think when he was the age about 8, he won a little art contest, and his prize was some crayon, some art supplies. And so he'd always had this kind of, you know, interest in art, this kind of talent for creating art and this desire to create art. His career is brief. He's born in 1888 and dies in 1946. He only creates about 140 works of art during his lifetime, and his career is brief. So he becomes kind of well-known in the mid to late 1930s and dies in 1946. But his rise to, his reputation is kind of meteoric. Like it comes kind of out of nowhere and becomes this, art hero in some ways that's known outside of Philadelphia, in New York, all the way to California. When the First World War breaks out, he served in the all-Black 369th Infantry Unit, and he sees, which is known as the Harlem Hellfighters. He sees action in France and is wounded. He's hit by a sniper in his shoulder, and he's wounded and honorably discharged. But while he was serving, he kept a sketchbook journal and kind of recorded in words and in pictures what he witnessed while he was serving. And he wrote this during on the occasion of the armistice. Prisoners were coming through our line, going back, and everyone were happy that they were out of it, for they knew that they would see home again sometime. So this idea of war and peace is going to become a theme throughout his work for the rest of his career. So after he goes home, gets married, and begins to learn to live with his injury. He begins creating works of art that are memories of his war experience in the late 1920s, early 1930s. At first, he paints them on the back of cigar boxes, and then as time goes on, he begins painting on canvas. So here's one, and one of the ones he's most known for, his best known early painting is this one, The End of the War, Starting Home. Elizabeth, how do I use the pointer? Okay, thanks. So all around the frame here are little instruments and things associated with war here on this panel. And here's another one of his war memories where he is incorporating, his war experiences, war imagery into the beautiful French countryside, which he said was very beautiful, but his experiences there were really very ugly. He began selling his paintings around Westchester. At first, he was showing them in the window of a shoe repair shop in Westchester for $5 each. And he also sold paintings and entered competitions at school fairs and the state fair in Pennsylvania. So in that shoe repair shop window, some of his paintings were spotted by this man, Christian Brinton, who was a prominent, and we are in Quaker country to remember that in Pennsylvania. He was a prominent Quaker and an art critic and an art collector. So he the idea that someone discovered him is not really so much the case, because his work had been collected within his own community at, at this lower price point. But when Christian Brinton kind of first saw his work, he became really supportive of Horace Pippin. And with Brinton's support, he got representation in both Philadelphia and in New York, and began entering, and Pippin also at this time begins entering regional and kind of beyond regional juried art exhibitions. And so he starts getting a bigger reputation beyond his little town. And this is like around 1936, 1937. So by 1938, around the time he's painting this image, he was included in an exhibition at MoMA. He's quietly attracting attention. So this was the 1930s. Think of other artists like I guess around the same time, Grandma Moses, there's this interest in folk type art. And the environment was kind of favorable for these really American self-taught painters. So here's Lady of the Lake. Actually, I don't have this on a slide. I was trying to keep my number of slides down, but this painting was inspired by a painting that Pippin would have seen at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. So he is visiting museums and taking inspiration from the works of art that he sees there. So a great example of that is this painting, The Getaway. So his forms are simplified, but they are not, his paintings are not simple. There's a lot going on in them. They are complex. They show an interest in modernism, I think. He says, one of the things he said about his paintings is, I think my pictures out with my brain, and then I tell my heart to go ahead. So he has an idea of what he wants to paint and then kind of goes for it and dives in. So I wanted to show some paintings that would have been an inspiration for Pippin in creating a work like The Getaway. So we have Winslow Homer's Fox Hunt, which was at the Pennsylvania Academy. And then N.C. Wyeth's a painting that N.C. Wyeth did for Men Have Conquered, the book, of Fox in the Snow. And N.C. Wyeth, by this time, by the time that Pippin was painting this in 39, had become a friend of Pippin. So Wyeth and Pippin were friends. So this kind of inspiration would have kind of been natural, I think. So in addition to his war paintings and genre subjects, Pippin occasionally turned to religious painting. This would have been very pleasing to the Quakers, the art collecting Quakers that were in his own community. But it was also of interest to this man, Dr. Albert C. Barnes of the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia. And he, along with Barnes, there's other really prominent modern art collectors that are starting to take notice of Pippin's work in the late 1930s and into the 1940s. So Albert Barnes said of Pippin, Pippin's art is distinctly American in its ruggedness, vivid drama, stark simplicity, picturesqueness, and accentuated rhythms. Pippin himself was not a Quaker. He was raised in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, but the Quaker emphasis on peace appealed to him. He received commissions for portraits and paintings from the Quaker community and created this painting for the Quakers, which is the Birmingham Meeting House in summertime, commemorating the 250th anniversary of the Quakers' first meeting for worship in Birmingham Township, which is all in that same area where he's in around Philadelphia. He also focuses on heroes, this idea of heroes. He does a series of paintings of Abraham Lincoln. He paints Marian Anderson a few times, and he also does a series that's a little bit, that's more tied to social history, social justice, around the abolitionist John Brown. So this is a complex scene. There's a lot going on here, and he actually inserts a portrait of his grandmother into this scene because according to his family legend, his grandmother witnessed this John Brown's hanging. I think it later was found out that that couldn't have been possible, or maybe she was just a tiny little bitty girl when this happened. Definitely not the age that he painted her there. But he painted several images from John Brown's life. Some popular paintings by him in the late 1930s, early 1940s are these genre subjects, Giving Thanks. This is Domino Players. This is the painting in the background of the photograph right there of Pippin and Albert Barnes. And he won, this is when Pippin won an award for the Domino Players painting at this juried exhibition in Philadelphia. Oops. Okay, so by the mid 1940s, going into the mid 1940s, he's something of an art star. He's had shows in New York and of course Philadelphia, but also in San Francisco. And he can, I think, feels like maybe he can afford to be a little bolder in his work. And so in 1943, he completes this work, Mr. Prejudice, which is at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. We actually requested this painting, I think, for Black Artists in America, but Philadelphia couldn't loan it for one reason or another. But of course, you can see why we would have wanted it for the exhibition. There's a lot going on here. And the V in the middle is for victory, but it's also victory in war, but also Pippin's dream of victory over inequality. The painting itself is segregated. So we have white men over here and Black men over here. And of course, the imagery of the Klansmen here is really kind of shocking for us. The Statue of Liberty is featured on the Black side of the painting, which I think is a bold statement. And the figure here has gone back and forth. Some people have felt that this is a man who's going to do a lynching. Other people think it may be an image of John Brown going to his hanging. But another thing he's doing, you see soldiers in this painting as well. Sorry, I put this too far on this side of the screen. But what he's doing here is connecting the horrors and atrocities of war with racism and lynching that's going on in the South. And that will continue with the Holy Mountain series. And to me, in a lot of ways, I think the Holy Mountain series, it's 3 finished, I guess you could call it 3.5 paintings, 3 finished paintings and 1 unfinished one. That is in a lot of ways the culmination of his career. It combines biblical subject matter with war imagery and social justice, a social justice theme. The subject is the idea of a peaceable kingdom that comes from the book of the prophet Isaiah in the Old Testament. That's about peace and harmony within the natural world and among humans. So I'll read this a little bit because the words that are in this passage are really visible in the work of art. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord, and shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord. And he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears, but with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. And the cow and the bear shall feed, their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox, and the sucking child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice's den. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. So where did Pippin's inspiration come from? Probably from Edward Hicks' series, A Peaceable Kingdom. Edward Hicks was a Pennsylvania artist, a Quaker. He painted more than 60 versions of the Peaceable Kingdom. Pippin would have definitely been exposed to his paintings. Pippin's dealer at this time, Robert Carlin, owned 30 paintings by Edward Hicks, including several versions of A Peaceable Kingdom. Carlin suggested the idea of Pippin painting a subject like this. And I think you can see in going back kind of the closeness between the two. However, instead of where it says in Isaiah's passage, and a child shall lead them, Pippin inserts an image instead of a child, as you see in Hicks paintings, a Black adult male that some people have said is possibly a self-portrait. Hicks imagery, Edward Hicks imagery, was rooted in this engraving based on a painting by Richard Westall that was featured, that was reproduced in a version of the Bible produced in the early 19th century. So this one is pretty literal visual translation of the passage from Isaiah. Both Pippin and Edward Hicks insert contemporary, or at least semi-contemporary, history into their work, along with the really pretty literal imagery of the animals. So here's all the animals here. So that contemporary imagery is in the background of both paintings. So here we're looking, over here and over here. In Hicks's painting, the little scene that we're looking at is William Penn's 1682 treaty with the Lenape tribe. It was a promise of friendship that was made called the Treaty of Shakamaxon. So William Penn and Edward Hicks, both Quakers and pacifists. So Hicks's image, semi-contemporary imagery reinforces the idea of peace, of a peaceable kingdom. But on the other hand, Pippin's contemporary imagery challenges that idea. In the background here, we see white crosses that are, signaling graves of World War I officers. Then the soldiers here in the background too. And then if you look really close, and it really shows up, you can really see it more in person than you can in the reproduction, the red poppies here in the background that are, as a lot of us remember, a symbol of remembrance of those who lost their life in the First World War. So another thing about this painting is that a great thing about this is that Pippin commented on it a lot, on his inspiration, why he made it. So here's something he said: "Holy Mountain came to my mind because the whole world is in such trouble. And in reading the Bible, it says that there will be peace in the land. If a man knows nothing but hard times, he will paint them, for he must be true to himself. But even that man may have a dream, an ideal, and Holy Mountain is my answer to such painting." So if you note the date on this work of art, it's June 6th, 1944, which, as we all remember, is D-Day. And Pippin, of course, would have been aware of this. And I don't think Pippin made this painting, the whole thing on June 6th, 1944. It's really more to acknowledge that date. And great thing about being a curator in the age of the internet is you can find all of these things. So this is from the Philadelphia Inquirer, their headline on D-Day. So the Holy Mountain series becomes Pippin's visual anti-war protest, I think, his anti-war painting. But it's also more than that. Oh, I forgot about this. Another quote that he said about this: "The world is in a bad way, I mean war, and men have never loved one another. Then one thinks of peace. I thought of that when I made the Holy Mountain." So we will see this, and in part 2 of this lecture, where I go through the idea of peace on earth and art, is that most of the time when you're looking at images of peace, there's also an image of war there to kind of contrast with that. So again, I told you about the red poppies, the symbol of remembrance, and this whole scene, this whole little area of the painting is being overseen by this creature here, a cockatrice, which is a centuries old symbol for the devil and for evil. So he wanted to connect, and this statement by him here reinforces that. really makes a statement on the atrocities of war, but also with violence in the South. As the men are dying, today the little crosses tell us of them in the First World War and what is doing in the South today, all that we are going through now. So he's looking, he's looking at this kind of utopian world where everybody exists in harmony. He's looking back to the First World War, but he's also looking at contemporary events in the Second World War and thinking about what Black men and women are facing in the South. So Holy Mountain 1, at the time it was called Holy Mountain, or The Knowledge of God, was a hit for Pippin. And keep in mind, just a few years earlier, he was selling his paintings for $5 a piece. It was purchased for $1,000 by the Encyclopedia Britannica company, and went on tour. They had exhibitions of their collection right after maybe 1946, 1947, around this time, and the painting was included in that exhibition. So later that year, just a few months later, he returned to the same subject of a holy mountain. This time he dated the painting December 7th, 1944, and marking the anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. This time too, you can see that obviously there's lots of similarities between Holy Mountain 1 and Holy Mountain 2. But this time, instead of the shepherd, the male shepherd overseeing the scene, it's just children and Black children that are in this image. In Holy Mountain 2, there's more anti-war imagery with the airplanes. These are airplanes up here, which is up there connecting to Pearl Harbor, but also more closely with racial violence in the South. And I'll show you here. There's a figure of a lynched man there hanging from the tree. And again, this whole section, and you can see the soldiers over here are hunters. This whole scene is being, lorded over by another cockatrice, a symbol of the devil or a symbol of evil. Holy Mountain 3, the third version of this painting, dated August 9th, 1945, commemorates the bomb on Nagasaki. And lynching victims appear again in this painting over here. A little more clear this time. And then of course you have again the white crosses and the soldiers here, and a tank is in this painting too. This is the final completed Holy Mountain painting. Very soon after he completes this work, the elk, whose date is August 26, 1945, which is the date when Japanese diplomats board the USS Missouri, receiving instructions on Japan's surrender in World War II. And he also, in the next year, begins a fourth Holy Mountain painting with a few of the same animals, just kind of getting started on this painting. A few of the same animals, but in a completely different landscape with an actual mountain in this image. And of course it's unfinished, so we don't know what it would have looked like when it was completed, but it does seem more desolate and apocalyptic a little bit. The painting was planned to, this painting, Holy Mountain 4, was planned to go to to collectors Claire and Henry Luce, but an American power couple in a lot of ways. But Pippin died before it could be completed of a stroke on July 6th, 1946. So this is a painting, a drawing that was done at his funeral by Julius Bloch, who had painted a portrait of him that I showed just a little while ago. Actually, this book was in the works at the time that Pippin died. It was Horace Pippin, a Negro painter in America, was published in 1947. When it was published in 1947, it was the first monograph on a Black American painter published in the United States, which is pretty amazing. And the painting that's in Black Artists in America, Holy Mountain 1, was included in that book. This book you can find on ABE Books. It'll set you back a little bit, but you can find it. And it was described in that book as Pippin's considered contribution to the cause of peace. So it's definitely one of the masterworks in Black Artists in America. I have just loved having it here, and just grateful to Art Bridges for lending it to us. So what I wanted to do now is talk about some other works of art that are describing peace on earth. This is not, anything famous. This is a greeting card, I think, from Hallmark. But like in Pippin's work, we will often find that there needs to be war for there to be peace, at least visually. So we'll start really, long ago with the standard of Ur, which is just a small box that was, they think it was meant to house a musical instrument. It has two main panels of it, one of peace and another of war. So here's war in the top, and you can see the soldiers here. And then peace, which I love, is described as a big party, like a banquet. And that's their version of peace on earth. Moving on in time, the Auropocus in Rome, or the altar of Augustan peace. This was commissioned after there had been years of war between Rome and Spain and France. And in the Auropocus, there are images of, abundance all over it, and agricultural abundance, and images of people with all different kinds of animals coexisting together. The dove of peace is a centuries-old symbol. Here, this is at Nicholas Verdun's The Altar piece that he created. And then here's the dove bringing an olive branch to Noah, telling him that the flood waters are receding and things are calming down. And he's got all of his animals in his ark. This is another one as we get into the Renaissance era, Lorenzo Costa's Garden of the Peaceful Arts. So this is a painting where we have war imagery over here, and then peace that's brought about by the arts. So you see musicians and dancers in this side of the painting. You have Botticelli's Mystic Nativity, where there's, animals here kind of getting along, all these people hugging each other. And that's brought that kind of peace and harmony is brought about through the Nativity. I love this tapestry here. Peace and mercy win the promise of redemption for man. This is another a tapestry from the Netherlands. But if you get close, you see there's all these words that are woven into the tapestry. And what they're describing is the things that go along with peace. So justice, pity, faith, man, chastity, truth, and humility are some of the attributes that are personified in the tapestry. This hand scroll is from the New York Public Library's collection. It's illustrating the Japanese epic, The Chronicle of Great Peace. The epic, the story, was written in the 14th century, but this illustration is from the mid 17th century. And again, there's image, am I looking at this right? Here's an image of war and then an image of peace underneath it. Okay, so Rubens' peace and war painting, I love. So here's all these personification, here's a personification of peace, but look, here's the leopard that's come back into the scene. And then all of these people are fighting off war back here, or turning their back on war in the background. And if that's not enough, here's a painting of Rubens' painting, The Allegory of Peace. So we're going a little deep here. But we also have the leopard down here in this picture, and the dove of peace here. So there's all kinds of allegories of peace. So here's an allegory of peace and justice. So here's the dove of peace here. This is the allegory of peace. This figure would be justice. But there's all kinds of animals in this painting too, that kind of tie into our idea of the Holy Mountain and the Peaceable Kingdom. And another personification of peace by Elizabeth Louise Vigée-Lebrun. So here's peace with the laurel wreath, and bringing back abundance with this kind of cornucopia of fruit and flowers. We get to, this is where Edward Hicks' Peaceable Kingdom fits into our Peace on Earth chronology. And this is another version of this that's at the Met Museum, which actually this version does not include William Penn's treaty in the background. So some of them do, some of Hicks's Peaceable Kingdom paintings do include that, and some do not. As you get later into the 19th century, this is Turner's Meditation on Peace. This was made kind of illustrating the burial at sea of his friend, the artist David Wilkie. There's actually a companion painting to this that's of war, and the colors are much more fiery red. So to depict peace, he uses cool blue tones here. The artist Gary Melkers created a mural of peace for the Library of Congress here, and I showed there's also a mural of war that is nearby. So here's peace as a procession. And then commemorating the end of World War I is George Luke's Armistice Night, 1918. So showing peace as a celebration, as an ending of war. And I think this painting's really, really awesome. So one of the artists that we know that's really associated with images of peace, or at least the dove of peace, is Picasso. This is Picasso's Dove of Peace that's made. It's made about a little more than a decade after his, famous anti-war painting Guernica. This dove, the image of the dove in here, was made to be used on the poster for the International Conference for Peace in 1949. This is another thing you can find, that poster you can find on ABE books or First Dibs or something, but it'll set you back too. His other Dove of Peace is this one. It's perhaps more iconic, definitely more licensed and out there in the world on holiday cards that people have been sending for years. And then as we go into the further into the middle of the 20th century, I thought this was interesting. This is the sketch that will become the peace symbol, peace sign that we all know today. It's by a British artist, and it's a sketch of nuclear disarmament. So he's taking the semaphore flag symbols for N and D, and that's what made the peace sign. Interestingly, this is in a library collection at the University of Bradford. The Commonwealth Library is an independent peace library, and this painting is kept in their special collections, which I think is cool. So I thought this was another one that really illustrates the idea of peace on earth. Norman Rockwell's kind of Peaceable Planet. His painting of the Golden Rule that was featured on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post in 1961. This is Rockwell is challenging the claim in the early 1960s that his art, he himself, was old-fashioned. And he said about this, "I'd been reading up on comparative religion. The thing is that all major religions have the Golden Rule in common." So he painted this for the cover, and he had actually kind of already done some sketches for this, but he included figures, people that represent all of the different major religions of the world. The painting was turned into a mosaic that is in the collection of the United Nations today. So finally, this is really weird. Sometimes when you Google things, you come up with some weird things pop up. And one of those is this mountain. And if any of you have seen it, I'm probably going to think you're weird. This movie is a 1974 film by a Mexican filmmaker that is really you can see like a trailer for it. It's really psychedelic. A film about people who go to a mountaintop to escape the corruption of the world. But even the preview is NSFW, not safe for work. It gets a little freaky on the Holy Mountain in this movie. But there's these like weird goat, lots of weird goat and all different kinds of animal imagery. But I think Horace Pippin's Peaceable Kingdom is the best to me because it shows hope of a peaceable kingdom, a peaceable world with the reminders of why we seek such a thing in the background. So thank you for listening. I wanted to offer my own wishes for you all that there will be peace on earth in 2022. And thank you for coming. And I'll leave you with Horace Pippin's painting of Christmas morning breakfast from 1945. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you for hanging with me. All right, thanks guys. I really appreciate you coming. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy New Year. Oh, and if you're still searching for some last minute holiday gifts, we have plenty of copies of Black Artists in America, and the front desk can sell you a copy. Also, our beautiful collection catalog makes a wonderful holiday gift. And so I'm really grateful to all of you for your support of this exhibition and for all that we do here at the Dixon. Thank you.